Flashback to when I'm 6 years old. Much like I am right now, I'm absolutely paralyzed with fear. No, seriously, guys, there's like a plastic thing down my back, and it feels like someone dumped a tub of Legos into my jacket. But yeah, I'm absolutely paralyzed with fear. And there are 3 choices in front of me, 3 divergent paths that I could take that would forever change the course of my life. 3 options that could quite possibly make me the world's next greatest Pokemon master. Have you guys ever been in that situation when you just don't know if you should pick Charmander, Squirtle, or that other one, Bulbasaur? Yeah, that one. That was the kind of situation I was in. Welcome to my world. I live in a generation of problem solvers, of innovators, of inventors, of the world's greatest doctors and leaders and athletes. I live in a world of magical warlocks and wizards and magicians that save the world on a daily basis. But these magicians are saving a virtual world, not reality. Welcome to the world of virtual gaming, a phenomenon that has swept the globe. So, in the 21st century, America finds itself a little too caught up in saving Princess Peach from Bowser, taking instructions from Navi, the tiny floating fairy woman, or destroying all the turrets to reach the Nexus, or was it the Lexus, in League of Legends. These things are all over the world. But what do handheld controllers and joysticks and cursing at your desktop screen, left, right, what do these things have to do with education? With integration or titrations or learning about apartheid in Southern Africa? What do video games have to do with education? And so the answer to this question is that video games do not have enough to do with education. And so, the education system right now is, quite frankly, pretty messed up. And to ask how many solutions we need to properly deal with it would be like asking how many cookies would the Cookie Monster eat if he had an unlimited cookie gift card. There are so many different solutions we could use to apply. So let's start with something out of the box. Let's move away from the pre-written speeches. They won't tear. Let's move away from the pre-written speeches and note cards. Let's move away from these things. And let's do something out of the box. Let's do something innovative and creative. Let's do something with video games and fun. So, the first main problem area is that we have the wrong approach to education. The government, America as a whole, is taking the wrong stance. It is fighting an uphill battle that it does not need to fight. Now, what does this mean? Professor Marshall from Winthrop University explains that the new generation of students today, the new generation of youngsters, is referred to as the millennials. They are thinkers, they are creators, and they are believers. On a daily basis, they choose from over 10,000 radio stations, 200 cable television networks, and over 30 million websites. We are the millennials, and we live in this era of information. We are different from our analog-based predecessors because we approach information differently. We approach it digitally. Now, the problem with this is that education has not changed. Education is still based on this old analog tradition. It's not digital, and it hasn't changed to meet our needs. And so we see that we are creating a disenchanted youth. So a simple kind of analogy or metaphor. If someone grows up, if a millennial grows up knowing how to use a graphing calculator, if you hand him something like an abacus, he'll be like, oh, what's this, some kind of doorstop or something? I don't know. And he won't know what to do with it. So why are we handing our generation of millennials these outdated abaci of educational systems? And just in case you guys, that's an abacus. So yeah. It's not a doorstop, I promise. But see, this is the problem, that we're using abaci instead of these innovative digitalized methods. But it's not simply the lack of this digitalized education. It's disenchantment of the youth as a whole. If we throw 24 students into a small, gray, prison-like classroom with a huge stack of textbooks, we're not going to create the newest generation of doctors, of politicians, of leaders that will solve our world problems. We're creating a generation of disenchanted youth, of students that don't want to do anything with their education. So what do we do? How do we make education more fun? How do we approach this generation of millennials? Well, video game authority, Jane McGonigal, she actually had a TED Talk on video games as well. She says that the face of this interesting young man right here, he's on the verge of something called the epic win. And we need to make education an epic win. So why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we having interactive education? Why are we forcing students to passively take notes and regurgitate information on tests? Why don't we have video games where students can play as Roman conquerors or Grecian architects or Minutemen during the American Revolution? Why are we learning history? Why aren't we living history? Why aren't we living mathematics? Why aren't we living and fully applying the sciences and the mathematics to modern world problems and the world today? This will not solve any of our problems whatsoever. But this isn't the, so to say, meat of the issue. I'm sorry to any vegetarians, I guess like meatless center of the issue. The meat of the issue is, next slide actually, the meat of the issue is the principle of humane education. What is this? Today we live in a world with political corruption, economic disadvantages, and strife all over the planet. We live in cities that are choked by smog, choked by pollution. We live in areas where farmlands are heaped with pesticides and dangerous chemicals. We live in a world where there are so many problems, but there are also so many bright, wonderful young students that have these solutions to these problems. The only issue is that they don't feel the sense of responsibility, the empowerment they really need to fully combat these issues. Now, this is where humane education kicks in. Humane education, or creating this humane obligation to go out there and tackle those issues. This is why we need games like Spent, which is a game that I recently tried on the internet, a game where you live as a family that only has $1,000 to make it through a month. I had to sacrifice medical insurance, my children's birthday parties, and familial stability to just pay the rent and put food on the table. There are games like Fold It, interactive protein-like puzzle games where players can design protein structures that real-life researchers use to make medical products to combat disease. There are games like these that put students in the shoes of individuals that are disadvantaged and truly make them realize what sort of problems exist in the world. And there are also games that make our youth, the youth of America, the millennials, truly feel empowered and able to change things. Games like Fold It. So why aren't there more games like this? Why isn't there a greater world vision? Why can't we have games where students in their science classes play in post-zombie apocalypse world where there aren't any resources left, no more energy, no more farms? How do they create the future of energy, the future of food, the future of political structures in a world that has none? What about games where students learn how to use the Pythagorean theorem to save children in burning buildings? This teaches them social responsibility, humane obligation, as well as educative principles that help them to fully benefit their societies. So my question is, why aren't we doing these things? Now, my purpose today is not to mislead anyone. Usage of video games or even digital media in education is nothing new. I went on Google and there were dozens of articles. I watched TED Talks about things that my TED Talk is talking about. But mine's cooler because it has humane education. I'm sorry, Jane McGonigal, I love you. So the fact of the matter is, there are all these resources out there, but we're not changing anything. In 2008, the federal government only spent about $100 on every single student nationwide to develop these new digital media principles, to develop these new softwares. Now, this was in 2008, and the numbers have changed, but we don't see humane education implemented. We don't see more digital media implemented. Instead, we see a greater and greater disadvantaged, disenchanted youth that does not feel empowered to solve the problems that are existent in the world. And this is something that desperately has to change. Why can't we do all these things? Why can't we have games in classrooms where we learn about how to make new energy systems, new political systems? Why can't we learn about economics in interesting ways, mathematics in interesting ways? Why can't we live history instead of just passively learning history and regurgitating on tests over and over and over? Why can't we do something like maybe save the world and have time for a little bit of Pokemon too, but mainly save the world? Why can't we do these things? Why can't we implement these new methods and have these new innovative principles? There's a school in Manhattan called Quest to Learn, and their curriculum is entirely based off of video game principles. And their pupils have some of the highest mathematics and science scores in the area. We're not losing anything by integrating these new forms of media into our education systems. Yes, we need enthusiastic teachers. Good textbooks will always be in high demand. But when we fail to adapt our approach to the minds of the millennia of today, when we fail to adapt our education approaches to truly make a greater America for tomorrow, are we simply giving up this ability to change the world, to really affect the world? And so, a last few concluding thoughts. You might go home and save Zelda, or play some Mario Kart, some Cooking Mama, if anyone knows what that is. You might go home and play League of Legends and destroy some turrets and, fight to the end. You might go home and play as Kirby, that adorable blob of pink wonderfulness that swallows everything. There are so many things that you could go home and play. But you don't simply have to play at home. Let's play at school, but let's make it productive and thought-provoking video game play. Let's change things. Let's go out and do something. So the next time you have that awkward moment when instead of saving Princess Peach, you save the world, that's a good thing. This is something that we should all do. And so, let's do this. Let the gaming begin, and may the odds be ever in our favor.